Hi, everyone. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Kutarna. This is the Catholic Business Wisdom Series, and today's topic is legal matters, things that you should know and things that you should pay attention to in your business that are in the area of law or regulatory or standards, all of which require an element of compliance on your part. A couple of things I'd say at the beginning is that in your prudential approach to making sure that what you are doing is legal in terms of compliance with all applicable laws, as they say, I'm not expecting you to become a lawyer. Neither am I expecting you to be ignorant of the law, because you know that ignorance of the law is not ever an excuse. And so we must, just as we do in searching for virtue and in understanding the faith, it is our duty to dig into and understand what the law requires. And so if you have a business, a startup, or an idea, or an existing business, I would suggest the following 6 areas that you should take a look at. It would be good to do a compliance audit of your own business or your idea in these 6 areas. Number 1, incorporation and continue as a business. Whether it's a sole proprietorship, a company, a limited liability corporation, a 501c3, an LLC, or a Canadian controlled private business. Those are all of the typical terms, but it's all about incorporation and continuing. So in this area, number 1, incorporation, I would look at making sure you understand what the rules are and whether you're complying with how you set up your board, your governing board. It is important that you do that. It's important that you would consider what is going into your USA, your unanimous shareholders agreement. You would look at your incorporation documents and your bylaws, and you would construct an accurate and well updated minute book. So these are the standard things in the startup. They're actually all straightforward, but they require you to make decisions in advance. And so it's important that you look into the questions that are asked of you by the various documents as you incorporate and as you continue your business on an annual basis. So first of all, incorporation. And secondly, let's go to the topic of limits on your authority. And here I'm looking at environmental rules, certainly the criminal code in any country, the laws that govern trade and commerce, the laws that govern interprovincial or interstate commerce, the laws that govern financial transactions, banking information, anti-money laundering, all these other new kind of strategies that have been put in place by governments and their financial agents, the banking system, so that you have a well prescribed and proscribed limit on your authority. So it's important that you are aware of these and check them out. Number 3, production restrictions, I'll call it. Limits, restrictions on your actual production of your product, your service, the thing that you do, make, or sell. And here I'm thinking of examples like food safety, storage, input that are brought into the country from other countries or are manufactured domestically. The Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System, it's called by different names in different countries, but it's the workplace hazardous information and hazardous situations. And so safety inside the plant or the factory or the shop or even the office, and utilization of various chemicals and substances and production inputs in your company, all requiring a certain protocol and a certain safety standard. Of course, you will be thinking of this, but it's important that you consider in advance what your requirements are. The 4th category of legal matters to be concerned about is limitations on the actions of individuals and your business, your company. And here I'm thinking of processes that govern your approach. Let's take, for example, accounting and financial processes. Good financial practices, some of them set out in law and regulatory systems. Some are practices that have come about because of the generally accepted accounting principles. Separation of person and function. You can't have the same person have access to your bank account, receiving the invoices, and then writing the checks. You can't have the same person doing that because obviously it could lead to collusion or it could lead to outright fraud or theft. And so you have the doctrine of separation of person and function. Similarly, when you have decision making in a company, usually, especially if you're a publicly traded company, it's much more regulated, of course. But even in the private corporate world, you need to have your minute book accurately reflecting your activities. And so when you move into a certain direction or make an attempt to move into, let's say, a new geographic territory or a new product, you document this in your minute book and you show that the company has passed a resolution. This is not so vital if you're a single individual proprietor or a family business, but even inside of a family business, and certainly in a business where there are other outside shareholders, people who aren't related to each other, commonly holding shares in a company, you owe it in terms of justice and, of course, in propriety, in law, to be fair and have everybody understand the processes. And so the area of limiting the actions of individuals in a company, very important. And you should check that out and you should cautiously be ready for that. The fifth category that I would propose to you is in the area of zoning or bylaws. These are more local. I'm probably not speaking here about national or state or provincial level, but certainly city, town, municipality, your association, your business zone, or your homeowners association, if it happens to be a home-based business. There will be bylaws that restrict you and that govern your work. For example, a simple thing like parking rules. How long vehicles can stop in front of your shop or your store? Is there a loading zone? Can you be criticized by your neighbors or by your neighborhood association if you have too many cars, too many people coming to your home? Let's say it's a residential area. Or similarly, if it's in a building where there's limited parking and restrictive parking, how do you load? How do you unload? Homeowner association rules can be very restrictive. And so if you have a home-based business, let's say you're roasting coffee or you're running a small microbrewery in your garage, well, you're going to be emitting into the atmosphere, through your chimney, smoke and other substances. And so the environmental regulations will probably catch you on that if you're not aware. And if you're not aware of the time of day, for example, that you can do these things. There are rules on packaging and labeling of your product, ingredients, the hours of business that you might be able to operate your business, not so much in a commercial zoned area, but if it were in a residential area, you may not be able to run your jackhammer testing business at midnight. You would have to be somewhat sensitive to all the noise and regulatory and traffic rules. So this area of what I would call local restrictions on you through zoning and bylaws and all the myriad of rules, the intricate set of rules, very complicated in some instances. And the price of not knowing these can be as simple as getting a ticket or a fine, but of course it can be worse than that. People can sue you and municipalities can even restrict your business or stop you from conducting your business for a period of time. And I suppose in the extreme, even put you out of business. So not to be fear mongering here, but to be sensitive to what your local zoning and bylaws say. And then finally, number 6, the category of international law. There are some countries that are under restrictions. There are rules about who you can buy from, which country, how you manufacture. There are sensitivities to things like the use of potentially child labor or slave labor or extremely low paid labor or unfairly low paid labor. In international law, this is often restricted. And not only can you suffer reputation, but you can suffer seriously financially. You could even suffer legally if you follow the wrong practices, or if you cut corners, or if you, even in your shipping, for example, even if you bring in items through shippers that are not subject, let us say, to the usual immigration and customs rules of your country. It's important to know this. It's important to know, particularly if you're doing international imports and exports, that your products your inputs, for example, let's say you're bringing into the country materials and inputs to build your product, you might be able to understand that there could be restrictions on you. The product might have to come in and let's say, I'm thinking of an example of pipe or steel or some other products from certain other countries. It may have to sit in kind of a quarantine until it's inspected. And even if it's not in some sort of a quarantine situation, it could be in a situation where time is taken. It sits in a warehouse, and because everybody's backlogged, the whole supply chain is backlogged, you might not be able to access your product, your inputs, until time period has gone by. And so you need to build that into your own supply chain calculations and, of course, your production calculations and your customer service relationships. So these are 6 topics for the legal subject, the legalities, the law. In a sense, not that complicated, but in another sense, detailed, micro detail, probably a fair amount of work. Generally speaking, though, done only once at the beginning when you set up a business, or if you were to take a look right now and micro kind of zero in on the situation. If you are up to date, then if you show goodwill to these various inspectors and these various agencies that lay out all these laws and regulations, you can more or less keep up to date. Newsletters, bulletins, standard issue instructions come from these organizations. And so once you do your audit at the beginning, then you should be able to stay in tune with what's going on. As a summary, what I would propose to you as the owner of a business who wants to do it right and who wants to be good, a good corporate citizen, is a couple of things. One, do a survey of the applicable laws and regulations once again in your business, whether it's a startup, an idea, or an existing business. Check into what you're doing in all of these areas just to see if you are perhaps missing something or unaware of something, or if the world has changed on you. And so, number 1, do a survey. Number 2, make sure that you have continual updates. Either that's going back every quarter or every 6 months or even once a year to check it out again. It's an important step you can take. And number 3, do an audit of your compliance. Do it from the perspective of auditing your business to see if you are in full compliance. And then finally, a more challenging topic for us all is, I would say, we need to be ready, you need to be ready to decide what to do if a just law suddenly transitions and moves into the area of unjust laws. What happens if we are facing unjust laws in our business? Well, we can fight it legally. We can do all sorts of things to remedy this situation. But on the other hand, it also then puts you at greater risk because you're more visible. You will be perhaps targeted. You might be doxxed. You might be a target for some retaliation on the part of, let me just say, other people. And so I would suggest that you carefully watch things so that as the laws and the regulations move from more just and proper and right and true, possibly to the area where there's something that will be unjust, you need to plot your strategy ahead of time so that you know what you're going to do in that instance. It's not wise to be responding at the last minute. It's more wise to be understanding ahead of time and simulating what might happen, and therefore keeping in touch with people who are also aware of these things. So that's the story of the legal system in brief today. It's the Catholic Business Wisdom series. Glad you're here today. See you next time. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Kutarna. God bless you in your business.